Chellaney, if I may start with you at the outset. Namaste and Jai Hind, gentlemen. Thank you very, very much. Professor Brahma Chellaney, if there were Tibetans outside the Chinese consulate, would America have allowed them to do what they did? Would they have given them a free run? If there were Tibetans outside the Chinese consulate in Toronto or in Vancouver, would the Canadian authorities have allowed it?
You raise a very valid question. We have to put what has happened in San Francisco in a larger context. 4 Anglosphere countries, Canada, the UK, Australia, and the US. In the US is particularly the California region. These 4 countries have become the hub of violent separatist attacks on Indian diplomatic missions and on Indian diplomats. We're seeing a pattern now. We're seeing something that happens in London, then triggering a copycat attack in San Francisco, as happened in March. And we're seeing also a pattern in attacks being carried out in Canada and then being replicated in Australia or elsewhere. The question is, why are these countries allowing violent Khalistani separatists to engage in such open provocations and attacks? It's okay, for Khalistanis to demand Khalistan. That's one thing. But for them to take law into their hands, to stage violent attacks against diplomatic missions is unacceptable. It's a duty of the host country to provide security to diplomatic missions and to diplomats. Now, for example, if you look at this coming July 8th rally, the posters say, "Kill India." And they name Indian diplomats, including the Indian High Commissioner to Canada and the Consul General of India in Vancouver. In other words, Indian diplomats, Indian envoys are being put under mental pressure, damaging their working environment. In other words, they'll be unable to carry out their professional duties in Canada. This is completely unacceptable. And the question that we need to ask ourselves is that, is India doing enough to put pressure on these governments?
No, it's a fair question that we ask. And the other aspect is that why should also do a quid pro quo if the San Francisco India consulate is so vulnerable and open? Why heavily guard the US consulate in Delhi? Allow the Afghans to go and protest outside the US consulate? Allow those who are the indigenous people to come out and present themselves and go ahead and openly protest here at the Canadian consulate. Take away all the thing. If you can do it with the UK consulate for a day, let's do it for good. Anand Ranganathan, where do you stand?
Good evening, Anand. Let me begin first by wholeheartedly condemning what is transpiring in Canada, in San Francisco, and a few weeks ago in London. And that kill list being prepared by Khalistanis in Canada, the arson and setting fire to our consulate in San Fran, the desecration of our flag atop of our embassy in the heart of London by Khalistani vandals and hoodlums. This is totally unacceptable. And the British and Canadian Prime Ministers and the American President should have made sure heads rolled for this. In fact, I was going to say, the Indian Prime Minister should make sure that the British and Canadian and US Presidents and Prime Ministers made sure heads rolled for this. But then I suddenly remembered it was the Indian Prime Minister who did nothing, unfortunately, when vandals desecrated our flag at the Red Fort on Republic Day a couple of years ago. So I'm afraid I'm not very hopeful of any action. This is the 7th attack, Anand, on the Indian embassies and consulates in recent times by Khalistanis. Where is the security? How the hell can these people get away by shamelessly making and broadcasting a kill list of Indian officials? Summoning some low-ranked bureaucrats and condemning this attack is not enough, I'm afraid. Trudeau and Biden should be asked to explain these mishaps, because had the same happened in the UK or Canadian or US embassies here in the heart of Delhi and Chanakyapuri, Modi would have been asked to explain it. Jaishankar would have been summoned. Now to the second issue. Anand, remember how it took a month to nab Amritpal Singh? You just mentioned it 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
I'm afraid things aren't happening in isolation around the world. They are taking lessons from what is happening in India. What is happening in Punjab is scary. I am a child of the 80s, Anand, and so are you. And let us remember how, for all practical purposes, we thought then that we had lost Punjab forever. Until KPS Gill came along. Sadly, we don't have KPS Gills anymore. There is no doubt that the Punjab state government is proving itself to be wholly inept at handling the law and order in the border state. If it isn't the daily drone attacks, the drug mafia murders, the blasphemy killings, it is the police stations being run over by Khalistani separatists and anarchists to get alleged kidnappers released and not able to nab a Khalistani for a month. And when you do nab him, you find him inside a Gurdwara. The situation is exacerbated by lackadaisical coordination between the state and central forces. To top it all, the ISI is working tirelessly to create a compact between the Kashmiri and Sikh diaspora. Finally, Anand, one must not shirk away, I'm afraid, from blaming the center too in all this developing mess. Let us not forget how anarchists and middlemen and Khalistani separatists and supporters were mollycoddled by the center. Their every illegality went unpunished. Modi and Shah weren't able to stop the mob carrying swords and the other weapons from driving to the heart of the capital of India and hoisting a flag illegally at the Red Fort, a symbol of our democratic independent identity. The inevitable vacuum that is created when justice and rule of law whooshes away gets filled by anarchy and bloodshed, and that is exactly what happened. Worse, just 20 seconds. Many of the cases against the rioters were then withdrawn. Worse still, the Supreme Court stayed a silent spectator in all this mayhem. How can we claim, Anand, to be a great power when a mob removes our flag at home and abroad, prepares a kill list, and we stay silent?
So here's the thing, Anand. A lot of what you say, I would like to echo all of that, but there is one aspect. Perhaps they were waiting for one bullet to be fired and one bullet to claim a life and to turn the whole narrative into yet another violent victim game in the national capital, where all you could do is weather the storm at that point in time. Nobody liked the insult to the national flag. Nobody liked the vandalism or the attempt to try and scale the red forts and get onto the ramparts. But yes, there is one aspect that hurts Manjinder Singh Sirsa. The fact is that the Khalistanis are being allowed to appropriate the whole Sikh narrative. They are being allowed to say that they represent all of the Sikhs, which is such a fallacy. They're not even 0.5% of whatever the Sikh sentiment across the world is. But why are they being